I've been out to sea in my mind since I was a kid. Songs rambling round my head, taking me across the world and back home again. Home in the stillness, I got curious about other people's creative practice and how they made a life in the arts. So I invited some of Australia's most interesting artists over to the shed for a conversation. All right, here we go. Things have changed a little bit, which has been a good scene. The big powerboats, but old Pablo, he's used to coming off the beach. He's an organic kind of character. Today I'm headed off to catch up with Kate Miller-Heidke. I first met Kate back in 2008. It was incredible to witness her deliver world-class performances night after night. 17 years later, it's no surprise to me that she continues to have such a rich and diverse career. I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation takes us. Hey Kate, welcome to the Fisherman's Shed. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's great. I'd love to hear about the last song you wrote.
Oh God, about 10 years ago now, or maybe 8 years ago, that's when I wrote my last song. No, my husband and I got the dream gig of getting to write music for Muriel's Wedding, the musical.
Yeah.
And I've been, kind of fanatical about musicals since I was 5 and discovered Julie Andrews and The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
And there's this one piece in Muriel's Wedding which we've rewritten about, and I'm not exaggerating, about 20 times.
Right.
The show's about to go and open in England, in Leicester next year. Yeah. And we just wanted to have one final crack at finishing this fucking scene for once and for all. Yeah. And the process of going back in there was extremely daunting. But I hope we might have finally cracked it this time. It's Bill Heslop, Muriel's dad, in the Chinese restaurant. And he has to convey sort of a complex mixture of things. We have to see that he's abusive to his kids, but we also have to see that he's a corrupt businessman who takes bribes. And it's quite hard in one song, with one chorus, to kind of nail those two completely separate pieces of information that the audience need to get. Anyway, so that was the last song that I wrote. And we ended up finishing it in the actual workshop, with all the actors around us, which can sometimes be a really great place to write, even though there's a lot of pressure, but just the energy of being in that room at that time and going, I have to come up with something within the next 10 minutes. Yeah. Otherwise, this has all been a waste. Yeah. I like to write to a deadline. I think I need deadlines.
Where does your writing process begin?
Yeah, I wish I was one of those people that just wrote all the time. Yeah. But that's not how my life is shaped at the moment. Yeah. A lot of the reason for that, I think, is because I often have to save my voice. If I'm on tour, I can't speak. And singing, that's how I write. I like to write stuff that feels good in the voice. And so I'm about to have a good sort of 6-8 weeks at home writing songs for a new record. And it's very unsexy and un-rock and roll, but for me it's just about routine. Yeah. It's a little bit in the sort of Nick Cave school of just treat it like a 9 to 5. Right. Maybe I don't think I have as much stamina as that. I think I've got about 2 or 3 good hours in me a day, which is in the morning. Yeah. But I think first of all, what I'm going to do is do what's called a songwriting marathon, where you just try to write, say, 8 songs in 8 hours. And then you have to share those songs with people at the end of it. Okay. And maybe do that 3 days in a row, just to clean out the pipes, because stop my editing brain working overtime. Okay. Just churn them out before you have a chance to second guess anything. Yes. And then after that, I think I'll just force myself to sit in that chair from 10 to 12 every day. And,
So when you say you're going to do 8 songs and you're sort of trying to churn them out, are you just like, do you have any before ideas before you go into that, or you're literally just coming at it fresh? Do you, like some people will take notes in their journals and things like that, which they draw from later on when they're doing their writing? Are you just sort of free writing in the moment, like jamming out ideas? How do you go about it?
yeah, often I will use ideas from a notebook
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then sometimes something will just come to me and it'll be,
Yeah.
fresh.
So when you sit down to try and do 8 songs in a day, you just literally just throwing chords together and singing out melodies and just scatting almost. Is that how you kind of go about it? Like it's like, Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, he does a thing where he'll basically be playing the chords and you'll just sort of ramble out things, and then from that a word comes out from the subconscious, I guess, and then he kind of creates things like that, and other people are more intentional about. Is that sort of what it's like for you, or what is it like? How do you kind of find your way into writing it?
Well, every song is different, obviously, but that Jeff Tweedy style you've just described would be very rare. That doesn't ring a bell with me at all. I do prefer to have a lyric or a theme or a story,
Right.
or a title to give me the impetus to get through the song. I want to have
Right.
something to say.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe that's a limitation. I have thought about those methods, or I think it was Prince that would, chop up a bunch of different words and then throw them on the floor and just whatever he picked up.
Yeah.
I think that there could be something in that I should explore. But so far that hasn't been the case.
Ryan Adams does this thing, I think he calls it stacks or something, where you'll get 2 different books and he'll flick through them and he'll just scan the page for a word or line that he thinks is interesting, and he'll kind of reinvent it on the page. Then he'll pick up a different book, scan it till he finds something else, and he puts it on the page. And he does this stacking process where he's doing things. He talks about this idea about it's the subconscious that's unrising, something that he wants to talk about comes out, and he says it helps him to shake him out of getting caught into kind of patternings of writing things, which I sort of found was helpful for me to move beyond that as an idea. Is there anything that you do for yourself to try and push yourself out of that kind of patterning? Is there any of those other sort of tricks that you've picked up along the way?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I will have to try that because, my own life is already so well mined in terms of my lyrics, and let's be honest, not that much interesting stuff happens to me. Luckily, I've got a few chaotic friends who are like constant sources of songwriting fodder. But for me, the thing that really helped shake me out of my old ruts, the regular shapes that my hands always go to on the piano, is getting away from instruments, actually getting away from the house. So just walking, singing, and then if there was anything good, I'd put it into my voice memos, and then come home and try to craft a harmony actually with my voice. I think because it's the instrument in which I'm the most proficient. I'm just like a very basic utilitarian piano player and guitar player. But I have a lot more freedom with my voice, so I can be more sort of harmonically or like texturally interesting. But I'm interested in all of those methods where you can shake yourself out of, because I'm 42. I've been writing songs since I was 12. And you do fall into, you do have to make it sort of almost squash your old habits to force yourself to grow.
Well, it's trying to find things that kind of open you up, right? That you want to find yourself to new places in things, because you're right, because we tend to circle back to things. Sometimes I find going to a different instrument, like a random thing that I wouldn't naturally use, like I found an old harmonium one day, and that kind of unlocked some things for a record. And then on another album, I found this weird little banjo thing, and that kind of unlocked a bunch of things. Do you write in different ways on different instruments? Has that been a useful thing for you at all?
I normally write on piano, but I do find that like a real piano, I've got a real piano, and then in another room, just like a crappy old Roland that I've had for ages, but where I'm standing up, and even just the act of standing up often will jolt something out of me and then go back to the first piano.
Yeah.
But for me, I think my biggest flaw and hurdle is wanting things to be good instead of just surrendering to the process, like thinking too much about the outcome. And that causes so many stillborn songs, I think. So I have to use those neurological tricks like the songwriting marathon or lots and lots of small deadlines with accountability.
Right.
Otherwise, I will never truly believe something's good enough that it's finished.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. You should say that, because I've been feeling that way myself. Like, you know, not being attached to the outcome of a song. And one of the things that Nick and I have been doing is we're kind of going in together and have these sort of free-form jam type things. I'm not a jammer kind of a person, but just trying to be in the moment without any expectation, just to kind of be loose with it, with no expectations of a result at the end.
It's so hard. It is counterintuitive. I mean, I'm sure some people find it really easy, and fuck them. But it's like...
Yeah.
But it's funny, you know that's the answer, and yet it's still, you can't relinquish that control.
Right.
It's this leap of faith into the unknown. And I mean, putting yourself out there with anything new that you release is such a risk, and you risk failure and humiliation, public humiliation. It's like the worst thing as a human being. But you know that's the only way to get where you want to go.
It's like coming back to play. Like if you can enter a play state with it, that's what I found. Like if you can enter, like, you just sort of, I'm just having fun with this. I'm just going to try and have fun with it, as hard as that is to try and remove the pressure around it. I mean, you know, you've got an amazing career, and so you've had these things. I guess every time you're kind of entering into it, you're thinking about what sort of comes next and all the rest of it. But I know Bob Evans, Kevin Mitchell, he was saying for him, it was trying to enter into a state of play as he's kind of cycled around in his career and kind of letting go of things, you know. So that's an interesting idea, you're saying that, because I think that's, as you're moving through your career, you got to kind of almost kind of come back to that place, you know. It's hard.
Yeah, which is so simple and so complex.
So why did you write songs at the beginning? I guess that's that whole thing about where does songwriting begin for you?
Yeah, you're totally right. It's about play. I mean, you play music, and I was just writing stuff for the pure fun of it, just because of how great it felt, and to express emotions.
Yeah.
But
So were you a teenager? Like, how old were you when did you first write your first song?
I was 11. And I still remember it. Yeah. I mean, it was not good, but it was all about the process. Yeah. It was loving the process. And then in time, like, feeling as though I'd found my place where I, made sense, and people seemed to like it. So, oh my God, like, this is what it feels like for people to like you. I was always a really unpopular kid, and it was sort of the outlet that I could get any sort of acceptance, I think.
Were you a big poetry girl? Were you sort of writing in the journals kind of thing? Or was it more like, what was it for you? Was it more just singing? Singing was the deep passion, and then sort of songwriting came out of that? Or where did it sort of start for you in that way?
I was a big reader, I would say. I don't think I wrote much poetry, but I I certainly wrote a lot of journals and read a lot of books. But it came out of singing. I loved singing, and I started getting singing lessons when I was about 13, and it was the highlight of my week, and I loved my teacher.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember I went on this choir. I joined this national choir called Gondwana Voices, and met Alice Keith, who's an incredible musician. She was my age in the choir.
Yeah.
And she was playing all these incredibly sophisticated songs, Joni Mitchell style.
Right.
And I was really inspired by her, and she said, go away, listen to Court and Spark, listen to Blue. And, I'd never really heard of Joni Mitchell before that.
Yeah.
And that opened up my horizons and just became a lifelong obsession.
Yeah. So when you started singing lessons, was it classical singing or was it pop singing, or what were you doing at that time?
It was everything, which is such a credit to my teacher. It was a lot of folk music at first, sort of old English folk songs.
Yeah.
And then, music theatre, pop, classical, all of it.
All in the formations from the early ages, you know. So you tend to write in batches? Is that how it tends to work for you? You write in batches for an album?
Well, recently, just because of the way my life is structured, I do kind of have to, to do it have a dedicated period of time when I'm writing.
Yeah.
And hope that something will come out of that.
Yeah.
Because then I've got something else happening, like a tour or... but at the same time, I'm always thinking of ideas and themes and things and writing them down. I've got thousands of voice memos that I have to wade through.
Yeah.
But then, there comes a point where all those ideas have to kind of crystallize and be put through the funnel of the new record or whatever it is.
Yeah. And so are you're doing a lot of co-writing? We do a lot of co-writing for this particular record, or do you tend to do it on your own first, or how do you tend to work?
I'm actually not 100% sure how this next record's going to work. I'm going to try to do it myself with Keir Nuttall, my partner, and see how that goes. Mm-hmm. It can be a bit, I think, Keir's a genius and brilliant, the best lyricist, I've ever known.
Yeah.
And he's got a whole different skill set to me and pulls things out of me that I would never have accessed otherwise. Yeah. Just the tricky part comes sometimes with our relationship where, if we have a fight, it carries over and sort of infects the rest of our lives, and also because we know each other so well, if there's one tiny micro expression of like disdain or whatever, it sort of just drops a bomb on both of our sense of openness and creativity and vulnerability, all those things you need to have to make music. So we're going to give that another crack. Yeah. And I really hope that it works, and I think it probably will work. Yeah. But if it gets to the point where it's sort of fucking our marriage, then I'll look down a different path.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing that to have your partner in life and your creative partner together, because you guys have travelled really through a lot of your career together, right? He would have been around from the very early stages. Yeah. So you've gone through lots of different phases with that. How is that? I guess working with your partner, how do you find the balance with all of that?
Well, he actually wrote the song that sort of first got me airplay and got me a record deal and manager. Space They Cannot Touch it was called. And it's sort of quite incredible that we've shared so much. We've been together since I was 19, so it's been sort of over half my life, and we also play together live, and that's so amazing because we're kind of like a two-headed hydra. Like we've just played together for so long that we have a sort of wordless communication.
Yeah.
That's really fun. But yeah, it's. I think it has been it requires constant vigilance.
Right.
You know, to not hurt each other's feelings inadvertently. I think that's the main thing. And as you know, like as a musician, we're incapable of not taking things personally. You know, your song is a reflection of you and the quality of your soul as a human. So if you shit on it, it's wounding. And when it comes from someone you deeply respect so much, it's more wounding. But I think we're figuring it out, but it's a situation that's always changing depending on what we're working on together.
It's the constant evolution of it all.
Yeah.
So do you have sort of shorthands of kind of saying, okay, like I guess you're on tour together, you're writing together, do you have sort of shorthands to say, I think I might sort of step out of this situation? Or I guess you've probably worked out how to kind of dance around each other a lot, right? You're probably masters at it, I would imagine.
Yeah. Sometimes I do think we need like a special code or at least a list of rules or something. The great thing about Keir is that, you know, he can just send me via email a bunch of ideas on guitar, a bunch of lyrical ideas.
Yeah.
And I can use the stuff that I like, write it myself and send it back. And if that's working, then we can come together.
Right.
I think when we start in the same room together, because I'm quite impatient and I feel like I know really quickly if something's working for me or not.
Right.
Whereas Keir has a much more intuitive, like, just give me time, I'll find my way into it. I just let me jam on it for half an hour, and I'm like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
So, and it's my impatient, temperament. So yeah, I think that is how we're going to start. So just sending things back and forth remotely.
Yep.
And then,
from the other room.
And if it's working, then we come together.
That's great. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. Yep. So thinking about, I guess, at the early stage with that song that sort of took away on Triple J, that's sort of where I sort of began, and then the record deals happened. Do you remember that time, what it was like to be in that and what happened around the record deal? Do you want to talk a bit about that moment?
Early on?
Yeah, the early on stage of your career. Do you remember that time of going through the whole record label process and what that was like for you?
Oh, yeah. What in particular do you want to...
I guess, we wonder what, what success is going to look like and all the rest of it. And we think when a record deal happens. So I'm just curious to know what actually happened for you during that particular period of time. Did you have good mentors that led you through that process, that kind of thing?
No. I was just a young girl from suburban Brisbane, just completely green, completely naive.
Yeah.
I think I made some bad decisions. I think I trusted a lot of people as being so-called experts,
Right.
And maybe gave away some of my own autonomy, especially with how my music was framed. And as you know, framing is everything.
Yeah.
The context is the art. It's the way people hear it. And so, I had to deal with things like my album cover had to have a shot of me looking down the barrel of the lens. So that was a non-negotiable.
Right.
That was a rule for every female Sony artist.
Right.
And then, so things would come back. Like my album cover came back and they'd printed thousands of them. And I had this Hollywood tan that had sort of come out of nowhere. Like it'd been photoshopped without me sort of giving approval to that. They also, at one point, I remember going into a Blockbuster video. This really dates this story, but And there were a bunch of brochures there that
Right.
had my face on them, and they said, if you like Lily Allen, misspelt, Tori Amos, and Gwen Stefani, you'll love Kate Miller-Heidke. And I just remember picking this thing up and just being appalled, just like absolutely appalled.
Right.
Not just because of the spelling mistake,
Yeah.
but just like, I don't like how this is framing me as an artist, and
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. And I just can't believe that nobody asked me before they went and did that.
Right. So you didn't get any kind of, did it go out the way it was? So you obviously didn't get a chance to see any of the artwork at all, right?
I think they did reprint the overly tanned one. But
Yeah.
again, I was not confident enough to really stick up for myself
Right.
in the way I should have. And yeah, as a result, well, look, partly as a result of that, partly probably all my own issues and the music itself, but Triple J, who'd been a huge supporter up till then, just completely just like dropped me,
Right.
blacklisted, like,
Right.
which has happened to a lot of people, and
Yeah.
anyone that's been through that knows that it is devastating at the time, because they were seen as the only outlet for music with integrity.
Yes.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that would have been very complicated. Did you, so that first record, Little Eve, came out, and then you moved into Curiouser. You would have learnt some lessons, I guess, from Little Eve and what happened there. As you moved into Curiouser, did you find that continued to happen for you as you moved into the second record? Or did you start to control things more for yourself? Or what happened there?
I definitely started to control things more. But also, in a way, Curiouser was a massive reaction against all of that. And knowing that I wasn't going to be able to be played on Triple J at all was like, okay then, well, I'll just try to make a commercial radio album. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Never listened to commercial radio.
Yeah.
But I'll give it so we went out and bought Micah, I think, was on the radio at the time, like a bunch
Right.
of stuff that was on radio.
Yep.
And then made our sort of mangled impression of what that sounded like.
Yep.
And it was really fun. And like,
Yeah.
as I said, I like having a brief. I think I can make sort of deeply authentic music within a brief. It just helps to like focus a direction for me.
Right. So you went overseas to make that record. What was that like for you? Little Eve, was that done in Australia? Oh, it was done in Australia with Magoo, wasn't it? And then you went overseas. What was it like for you to record that album internationally?
It was amazing. It was so much fun. We just had 3 months in LA. You know, yeah, our producer, Mickey Petralia, was brilliant. He'd just come off working with Flight of the Conchords.
Right.
So he was sort of like flying high from their record. And
Yeah. And he did Beck as well, right?
Yeah, he's amazing.
What did you learn from that period of time in the studio making that album? Was there any particular things that you learnt that you've sort of taken from that time?
It's funny when you ask me that question, I only think of the mistakes or the things I would have done differently. I think that's probably a bad brain tick. But I'm sort of, I just go back and think, I hate click tracks, or like...
Well, that's a pretty real thing to learn from it, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really click track record, was it?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it was a pop. Like it
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it should have been,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But yeah, I just remember it being just full of energy and joy and fun.
That's great. And because we went on tour with you during the Curiouser record, and I remember we were sort of together and doing that kind of thing. And Last Day on Earth hadn't come out at that point, and you'd had the first couple of singles that had kind of come out. And at that point, you weren't sort of sure about where you fitted in things between the commercial and Triple J and all the rest of it. And then Last Day on Earth came out. It was just an absolute smash hit. I guess it had the Neighbours thing, which kind of built it. But you kind of went, I mean, you always had really a deep fan base. And then when that song came, it just sort of catapulted you. Did you know that song was special at the time of making that record? Had you identified it as a single, or was it because of the Neighbours thing that it kind of got elevated? Were the label even aware of it as a song to push forward? Because like, what is a single anyway? You know, what makes a hit?
Yeah, I knew it could be a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something I've always been able to pinpoint which are going to be the hit songs. Often,
Right.
not in my records because
Yeah.
all of my hit, but other people. I knew it was. But Sony would never have put it out because it was a ballad. So it actually took until it was like climbing the charts and in the top 10 of the iTunes charts for weeks before they sort of agreed to let me make a video for it. Because, it didn't sound like a single.
Yeah.
But I think when you do have a ballad that becomes a big hit, it's something that sticks with people.
Totally.
It's like it's an emotional connection that happens. Yeah, more than just like a feel-good, vibey song.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So you felt that when you wrote it, obviously, when you recorded it, it sort of was a realised idea. So amazing is the whole process with labels, and like there's a lot of guesswork. We kind of want to think that people in the know, but what makes a song get away and what doesn't, it's so random, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, usually it's as much or more to do with luck and timing and opportunities than it is about the song itself.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of songs that, could have been hits that never were, but yeah, I have learned that I can't trust anyone as much as I can trust myself.
Right.
Because nobody cares about my music as much as I do.
Right.
Yeah.
When we toured together back in 2009, what struck me the most from the first show was how beautifully crafted your live shows are. Like that heartfelt songs, and the banter was always incredible, and it was just really beautifully put together, like way back at the very start, and then I saw you again more recently, and again it was just like, it's the same thing but next level again. You always have been really intentional, it appears, about how you craft a set and how you use your banter and all the rest of it. How has it changed for you across your career, and was there something about the beginning that you approached it in that particular way?
Yeah, it was the folk tradition.
Right.
It all came from Woodford,
Right.
and I went to a few workshops with some old sort of folkies.
Yeah.
Christina Olsen, I remember her saying, you get on stage, you do 2 songs in a row, never speak before you play the first song, never speak before the second song.
Right.
And then you tell a little bit of a joke. And that, it's sort of...
Right.
Things like that I've always carried with me, and also I think with my theatrical background, I think about the set in a 3-act structure.
Right.
So three acts, each of which have like a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yes.
Another concept I use is a concept of pegs. You have these pegs from which you hang the sheet of the other songs. Basically songs that always kill no matter what.
Yeah.
You put those in strategic positions so you can take risks around them.
Yeah.
And all of those things have really, I think, put me in sort of good stead for a sustainable career. I'm just, when I go and see a gig, I want to be entertained, and I want there to be moments of light. I don't want to see an artist that just takes themselves super seriously, because to me it just gets really boring. And I want a personal insight into what makes them tick.
Right.
I want a story that I couldn't hear anywhere else. Yeah, but I think it just comes down to that folk tradition of not being on some sort of like elevated platform. It's me and then there's them. That thing of sort of that egalitarian thing of not too many pretensions, which I think actually works well in tandem with the operatic thing that comes in, because it's kind of not what people expect.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as I get older and get more hundreds of shows under my belt, I feel really secure in that, actually. Like, I know
Right.
the audience is going to be with us and come with us. So
Yeah.
I feel more and more confident to take more risks.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of those songs that we used to play in the old days that always used to kill no matter what, but that were like maybe kind of a bit novelty or cheap or gimmicky or whatever,
Yeah.
those are out.
Yeah.
You know, except on special occasions if someone really requests it fervently.
Yep.
And yeah, the amazing thing is that the audience are still with me. So that's very gratifying, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, your audiences were always engaged and passionate, even from the very beginning. And I always thought what was amazing, your whole concept where you're saying about the folk tradition, about not being elevated and actually meeting people or connecting to people on a real level, that was always really evident, because you have huge lines of people wanting to speak to you after the show and have photos and all the rest of it. And you're always really great at connecting to people and building your audience. Like, how important was, did you learn that from bands like the Waves or something? Because they were one of the early pioneers of doing that. And and when I saw you do it, I thought, Kate is one of the few people signed to a major label that does this, and it was really powerful.
That signs after the show, you mean?
Well, coming out, meeting people, signing people. I mean, you would stand there. I mean, I remember seeing you stand there for like an hour or something after a show, after being on stage, and continue to give to people. It was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that part of it was always really fun, because you'd meet all kinds of different people.
Yeah.
And I think when you write songs that are about real emotions and real sort of human experiences, people do feel deeply connected and they want to tell you, and people confide in you about, you know, the worst moments of their lives, or people are just incredibly wacky and funny, and that part of it I always found quite energizing, actually.
Yeah, so I guess now as you've progressed in your career and you're playing bigger rooms, I'm guessing you can't do that sort of thing as much anymore. Is social media, I guess, a way in which you do? How have you kind of gone in the dance into that sort of social media world of connecting to people and doing things in that way, communicating?
I've kind of gone through phases with that, but at the moment I'm in a none at all phase. I do, whenever I need to post something, like I'll write a caption, but generally I'm delegating it all to my management at the moment, because I can't, because being on commercial TV is such a weird, in terms of the, you know, online comments and things.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The few times I did start to look at that, it was starting to make me insane. So I can't. But I mean, I still write all my own posts and comments and stuff, but I don't look at everything myself.
Right. But before the commercial TV thing happened, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, you had this sort of deep connection to audiences from that way. Did you have big email lists? Were you connecting to fans in those kind of ways, or how did you find that kind of connection point to people? Was it through social media at that point?
I remember MySpace was a big thing. God, it feels so old. Twitter was a great place when it first was invented.
Yeah.
Those glory years. Yeah, around Last Day on Earth, 2009, 2010. I'm still not convinced that it makes people listen to your music, though. I think they just want to hear what inflammatory opinions you have, which was fun for a while until it turned completely toxic like it is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do still happen to meet enough people through the course of my life, and I get quite a bit of correspondence, you know, personal emails and stuff that
Yeah.
that I can feel connected. Yeah, but I can't do the social media thing anymore. I think that cons outweigh the pros.
Yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it? Because we were talking to Claire Bowdish about it, and she was saying that she has to do what you're talking about, which is just go to periods of time of no posting at all. Because it's that whole thing about if you're spending all your life outwardly facing without actually having time to kind of actually internally find your way, how do you kind of balance that with actually the creative work as an artist? You know, this is the thing.
Yeah, they're completely at odds, and I mean, social media is such a time suck. I heard it recently compared with alcoholism. You know, it's not something that affects everyone, but if you're prone to that kind of addiction, like the dopamine hits, especially as a musician, where you know I'm going to go on and look for a compliment.
Yeah.
And I think I do have a slightly addictive personality.
Right.
And I just don't have the time. But I also, every time I look on there, I come away feeling quite empty and hollow. It's a hollow experience, ultimately. I'm really grateful for all those platforms that I can keep in touch with fans and let them know what I'm doing, but I can't be on them all the time.
I mean, I guess the reason why I was kind of getting into it was because of on those early days of meeting audiences and really being engaged with them. You were on a major for a long time, and then you went independent. And when you did that independent route, you had a huge success with your kind of crowdfunding campaign that happened around that record. It must have felt good to know that those people were with you and kind of backing you as you moved into the sort of next phase of your career.
Absolutely. I think I owe them everything, and the people that come to the shows now. Some of them have been coming for 15, 20 years. You know, some people have come to, I think the record is, I've got a few super fans. One of them has been to like 120 of my shows.
Right.
You know, and without those people, I don't have a career. That's what it comes down to. And I think, always cherishing them and looking after them, that's the key to sustainability.
Yeah. What did you notice the difference between moving from to a major to an independent release? What were the big things that you noticed in that transition for you?
Interestingly, nearly no change. Nearly no change except for I could put out whatever I wanted and not have to, check it through the gatekeepers. Not have to fight to get the money to, make a video or whatever. It's just like, if I want to pay for it, I'll pay for it. But besides that, the audience was the same. I think I have great management, which really, really helped make it seamless.
Right, gotcha. And now that you've moved, you've gone back to a major, you've gone to EMI now. I guess you had Sony and then you went independent, then you with EMI. What's the transition been back into the major camp for you?
Really easy. And interestingly, like the people that I work with at EMI were my favourite people that were at Sony. Now they've moved over.
Right.
So some of them I've been working with for 20 years or so.
Right.
I think, look, it's so different to what it was. Back when I signed, it was a 5-album worldwide deal, which sounded amazing to a naive sort of little girl, but is actually completely shackling. So now my deals are structured totally differently. I think, it's not worldwide, it's just Australia.
Right.
It's one album at a time.
Right.
Let's have a chat after this. But they're all really lovely people. And,
of course.
They would never try to sort of tell me what I should be doing.
But that's an interesting, I guess, that thing as you've learnt that from your experiences to go, okay, we're going to do a one album at a time arrangement, and we're doing for Australia as opposed for the world and all the rest of it, So was it your management that sort of helped mentor through that next sort of phase?
Oh yeah, I mean I've had the same management since 2008.
Right.
Bill Cullen, who also looks after Paul Kelly and
Yeah.
Ballpark Music, a bunch of great musicians, and I think he's always had longevity as his ultimate sort of guiding principle.
Yeah.
And he's really good at it. So I'm actually quite shielded from all of that behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
He sort of helps put together the team, and that's it.
It's very clear because you really do have a full arcing career. It's definitely, it's been well crafted obviously by yourself and then supported by great management to try and, it's like how important is team around you to kind of enable those things to happen?
It's everything. I honestly can't take credit for, just planning tours in a timely way that makes sense, and also being able to say no to things.
Right.
To have someone you trust to go, do you think this is actually a no? And then he lets me say no. And to be able to truly trust someone, because I don't have the kind of brain to make those business decisions,
right.
even to think about what record label is best or any of that stuff. I can't be bothered thinking about it, and if I could, I'd probably make the wrong choice anyway. So it's so liberating to have someone so clever and competent.
So what would your advice be to someone who was sort of going through the beginning processes of deals, or there was a bit of interest around them? I mean, it's a very different landscape now to what it was back in whenever.
Does that still happen? Like, do people still get signed to deals?
I think it probably still does happen, but just not in the same way I guess we did. But would there be particular things you'd be suggesting to someone? If someone came to you and said, look, I've got this deal offering you to, what would you actually sort of say to them?
Yeah, you'd say, who's your manager, and do you trust him? And let them decide for you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, but also it comes down to, do you like the people? Do you trust the people?
Right. The instincts on it, trusting your gut.
More than what's the track record of this label, what other artists do they have?
Right.
I think that's a lot less important than, are these people on the level? Like, when you meet them, do they seem full of shit or do they seem nice? Yeah.
So you've done this massive regional tour all across Australia. How many dates was it? It was 58 dates or something? Or?
Yeah, 55.
55 dates. And, how do you look after yourself on a tour like that? Like, what are the things that you're doing to protect your voice or to kind of cope with doing that kind of level of touring? Because it's a lot harder than people realise to be on the road.
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to be able to sort of party and neglect myself a bit more, but now I can't. It's very much, you just live like a nun, and life becomes about that 1.5 hours on stage every night. It's very boring. It's about sleep and exercise and eating well. I need to have my porridge. We carry around bloody porridge everywhere we go. I've got a new setup at the moment where we're touring with our own desk, so I don't have to sound check, which is amazing.
Right.
So every night I walk on stage, and I've literally never set foot on that stage before.
Is that right?
Yeah, often I'm like, where do I go? Oh, it's that way.
Right.
But that's been like a godsend.
Yeah, to kind of cope with it. And what about you actually looking after your voice? Are there routines you do for preparing? Like what would you be recommending to a young singer preparing to go on stage? What's your kind of routine before you go on stage?
I do obviously my normal vocal warm-ups. We also have a secular prayer thing that we say to each other each night, just Keir and I.
Yeah.
Just to remind ourselves that we're, how grateful we are, and that the aim is to be in the moment and keep that spirit of spontaneity and, to avoid autopilot with so many shows.
Yeah.
just to realize that how much effort every member of the audience has gone to be there.
Yeah.
And expense and that really helps me sort of anchor me in the moment. And also I do a bunch of like physical things to stop my nerves from taking over.
Right.
Yeah, like taking up lots of real estate with your body, imagining that you've got 20,000 slaves bowing down before you, like Khaleesi in Game of Thrones.
Right.
And then going cross-eyed because you can never take yourself seriously when you go cross-eyed. I had to learn a lot of things for the Eurovision experience because that was so nerve-wracking.
Yes.
That if I didn't do something, like I was going to be completely thwarted by the nerves. And so some neurological hacks.
When I think about your career, it's so rich. You've done so many different things. It's like, I don't know when you stop, to be honest. Like, it's like you're doing musical theatre, you're writing all these pieces, you've done all these records, you've done Eurovision, you've done now The Voice. There just seems to be so many peaks across it all. You don't, from the outside, you don't see any of the valleys. Like most artists have peaks and valleys in their careers. How have you sort of navigated? I guess there would have been, have you experienced valleys in your careers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. How have you navigated through those things? Because it just seems, from the outside, it seems quite effortless.
You're right. The fact that I can do a diverse sort of range of things has been the key to like a lasting career in Australia, which is a pretty small country.
Yeah.
And it also keeps things interesting and challenging for me and, unstale. Especially getting to write for different characters. I love that. That's when that sense of play really comes online because it's like, it's not me, so this person can be a fuckwit. It's fun.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been troughs. I mean, COVID was COVID was a time where I think a lot of my identity and my ego, in the true sense of like, my id or whatever, got sort of quite dismantled, and I started questioning everything because at that point we didn't know if live music was ever coming back. We just didn't know, and there were all these attempts to do Zoom concerts and people saying this is the future, and just this creeping sense of dread. Like I just hated those Zoom concerts with a passion. Like I was thinking, God, do I have to go back to uni? I mean, what am I going to do? That was quite terrifying and traumatizing in a way, but it also set me up now to be just eternally grateful that it's back. I mean, live music is still struggling in some ways, and festivals are closing, and but after COVID, it's something that I'll never take for granted again.
Yeah. So I guess coming through that, has there been a sense of where you want to put your energy into? Like, what is the thing that, obviously you seem to really light up when you talk about writing in themes or writing under characters or doing the work, and you've done the Bananaland musical. Is that something that you're wanting to focus your energy in on, or is it more just touching base with all of the different things that you kind of do?
It's all of the above, but there's everything cross-pollinates everything else. The next record, and I think every album I've made has been a reaction against the previous one, and hating the previous one, and wanting to do something totally different. And my last record was all about minimalism. It was all about like the quest for the perfect pop song with 3 ingredients or fewer, kind of,
Yeah.
And this time around, I'm looking forward to going much more expansive. It's going to be a gothic folk record, which allows me to be like quite, real and emotional and confessional, everything. But there's also a lot of scope for drama in that, which sounds fun to me. And I want to make a record that's actually just purely about the live show. That's not at all about radio. I think I'd be completely deluded to try to make a record for radio at this point.
Yeah.
It's to make songs that will kill live. That's what I want to do. And then, after that, I'd love to work on a one-woman show for the theatre. I've got that sort of started to percolate away. I'm interested in blurring the lines between live music and theatre. And so both of those things are exciting me at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't that, sort of thinking about how an album or work is going to exist into the world, and then thinking about. So is that something that you do you've done before in the past, of thinking about how you're going to present it live? Like that's a big intention to how that you approach making work, or is that more of a new revelation for you?
I've never thought deeply about how I'm going to present things live, and as a result, there's like dozens of songs which I've literally never performed once live because I can't make it work.
Right.
But I've always written for a particular, what David Byrne would describe as an architecture.
Yeah.
Like, you're writing songs for like a sweaty rock and roll room, sticky carpet, or for like a lavish theatre, or for earbuds, Billie Eilish pioneered this new style of singing that is for your internal ear space, it's always that becomes, the medium is the message kind of thing.
With international touring, I remember you did the tour with Ben Folds back in the day. You've been touring Australia a lot, and then was that your first beginning points into touring overseas, or had you been doing other touring before that?
Yeah, that was the first proper time. I think I'd done the odd show like in the Viper Room or whatever in LA, but no, this was the first time we got on a tour bus and actually, I think we played over 100 shows with Ben Folds, not just in the US, but also the UK and Europe.
What do you remember about that time of touring? Like, what did you take from that experience? I'm curious to know what it was like for you, the reality of what it was like for you doing those shows.
It was so great. It was like one of those peak life highlight moments, because the audiences, it sort of felt like my audience, but it was so fun every night. Just the process of winning them over. You've got half an hour to just really fucking get these people, get them where it hurts. And doing that night after night was so much fun. And then, I'd go out and sign and this is back in the day where people bought CDs. So, just selling hundreds and hundreds every night, and we'd walk. I just had this big stack of cash, like $40,000 US, going, oh my God, is this even legal? Yeah. But not that the money was the fun part of it. It was just, it was those rooms, like getting to play, the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville and the Fillmore in San Francisco, the greatest rooms in the US. Yeah. To these lovely people who, just some of the best audiences. I think that's where we really honed the duo thing, because I'd always played with a band. Yes. And this time around we could only afford to play the two of us. Yep. And that was like a beautiful trial by fire. That's where the duo thing really started to take flight. Yeah. So do you do a lot of touring internationally after that period of tour, or was it sort of at the end of that what happened for you after that? I played Coachella and got I opened for someone else. God, I can barely remember his name. Steven something from the Bare Naked Ladies. Anyway, I opened on a tour for him. And at that point, my American manager was like, look, you need to move over here. You need to move and play shows. And we were just feeling really burnt out. And I just wasn't up for it anymore. I just didn't want to...
Yep.
do that grind
Yeah,
for
yeah.
another 3 or 4 years to
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
crack it in America.
Yeah.
I was too tired, I think. And
It's interesting because John Butler talked about how he invested 10 years of his life into trying to break America, and he'd started to do that. But now if he was to do it again, he wouldn't necessarily do that. He wouldn't necessarily put that level of energy into touring. It was sort of a realisation that you didn't want to do that. You know, what happened when you came back from that period of time?
yeah, so we came back and made Night Flight,
Yeah.
that record. And yeah, then I wrote The Rabbits, the opera for children, which
Yeah.
sort of did open up that whole world for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I think. We know it was because of that we got offered Muriel's Wedding. But yeah, I think that time could be described as one of those lulls that you were talking about before, or like we were just so burnt out from spending years, it felt like in a Holiday Inn, and
Yeah.
I can just picture, I can smell the breakfast buffet, and the grey eggs and the
Yeah.
shitty, the American
Yeah.
food
Yeah, yeah.
is so, and we were touring so much through the Midwest where it's like really hard, and American, anyway, we were burnt out. And yeah, Night Flight was a really difficult record to make. I'm really proud of it. I think it's probably the best album I've ever made, but it was difficult. It was a slog.
Right.
And yeah, The Rabbits probably saved me actually coming out of that. Just having a project to work on that was so different. And I think it's quite lonely being a singer-songwriter. Whereas when you work in theatre, suddenly you're surrounded by people and you're in a team and
Right.
everyone cares about this thing, then you're collaborating together to make
Yeah.
it. Everyone's got their own different responsibility.
Yeah.
But the thing either floats or sinks depending on the quality of that teamwork, which
Yeah.
to me that was that was like a balm.
Yeah, because you've done a lot of collaborations. So what are you looking for generally in a good collaborator, or what is it that makes a good collaboration work for you?
Well, you have to be able to deeply trust and respect the person,
Yeah.
and believe that they're smarter than you in some ways, which is really tough, especially when it comes to my own stuff.
Yeah.
That's like a major barrier that I've, not thinking that everyone else is stupid or anything, but just trusting people can be hard.
Yeah.
But, ultimately collaboration is also about, is that person a good hang? Like, do I like their company?
Yeah.
Do I want to be their friend?
Yeah.
Do they bring a good energy to the process?
Yeah.
Like, do they make me feel like I can say anything and be a dickhead? Do they make me feel like I can come up with 20 bad ideas and they won't judge me for it?
Yeah.
That thing. I remember when I did my first songwriting collaborations ever was for an APRA Song Hubs in Bali. And it was something I was always terrified of because I don't want people to see that I'm actually shit. They're going to see it. Like it's...
Right.
And this Estonian girl called Curly, she's amazing. I could tell she was getting so frustrated with me and my hang-ups,
Yeah.
In the first session. She goes, look, it's just like doing porn. You take your clothes off, after you do it once, everyone's already seen your bits, they don't care. And that just really clicked for me. It really helped me, now I just don't give a shit. I'm like, yeah, these are my bits, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Or trusting in yourself. Being vulnerable is the hardest thing, right? It's totally the hardest thing. I struggled to write with other people for a long time. Like I had people within the band that I do things with, but I would never write with anyone else in another room. I found that very difficult.
Terrifying, really terrifying, yeah.
And then as I started to do it more, and and I do a lot with Nick, and it yeah, you just start to realise, well, it doesn't matter if you have a bad idea. Like, bad ideas are fine. That's part of how you lead to good ones. You know,
Yeah.
judge me. I think someone says, judge me on my good ideas, not my bad ones. You know.
Yeah, I think the way that APRA do their song hubs is really, the infrastructure is, they're really well set up for the way that I like to write, because it's, you have to write a song a day.
Right.
That's it. There's no excuses. And
Yeah.
there's someone at the computer and then two other people like
Right.
tossing around ideas. So you can
Right.
walk around, you're not like shackled to an instrument. You can
Yeah.
play if you want, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I find that quite a free-flowing, like easy way to write songs.
So structure and deadlines actually is what gives you freedom.
Totally. And I'm not but in any sense groundbreaking by saying that. Like, I think I was reading about Lin-Manuel Miranda, the way he wrote Hamilton. He said, his friend said to him, every Friday night, I'm coming to your place and you are playing me 3 new songs, no matter what.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, as I said, I'll just overwork something until it's dead,
Yeah.
suffocated.
Yeah.
And it takes me a little while to get into that sort of state where I can trust that I'm going to enter a flow state or whatever it's called regularly.
Yeah.
But so like you sort of have to get the chisel open the portal, push it out bit by bit.
Yeah.
And after a week or 2 weeks or whatever, it's out. That doesn't mean everything's going to be good, but it means you're sort of getting your left brain out of the way. My left brain's really overactive, I think.
Right, right.
I quite like details and logistics and dates and stuff, and it's like constantly trying to distract me with that shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's great. All right. One of the things I wanted to ask you is about, you're obviously known for your incredible voice and you've done a lot of training. How much of your week would you spend training your instrument, your voice, I guess? Are you still having lessons every week? Like, what does it look like at this point of your career?
I don't have them every week. I don't have lessons every week. I wish I did, but I just normally have them now if I'm going through some kind of vocal change, or if something's not working. It used to work. I mean, it's part of your body, so it is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so my teacher, Alison Bell, she used to be a sort of worldwide operatic superstar, famous for singing all the crazy stratospheric high, like Queen of the Night sort of stuff.
Right.
And now she lives in Tasmania, and she only takes a few students, but she's, I think, singularly able to understand the pressure that you're under as a singer, especially someone who is known for like virtuosic singing, or it can become a rod for your own back.
Right.
I mean, especially that really happened to me during Eurovision.
Yeah.
When I'm like, I had to put that stupid high note in just to show off.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realise that I'd have to fucking sing that fucking thing every day, like sometimes multiple times a day.
Yeah.
The rehearsal schedule is incredibly onerous. And I was just sort of like, what have I done? And the more you overthink it, the more likely it is to go off the rails. It's such a mental exercise. I know. I read, I think it was a David Foster Wallace article about elite tennis players and how, in fact, their superpower is the fact that they can switch their brain off at exactly the right moment.
Yeah.
You can't win tennis matches if at match point you're thinking, oh my God, it's match point. Oh my God, all I have to do is win this one.
Yeah.
That you will inevitably lose. So
Yeah.
you have to just completely clear everything out and just rely on muscle memory.
Yeah.
Singing is a lot about, actually just getting out of the way.
Right.
And trusting your body to do the thing. But different things work for me at different times. At the moment, it's funny, that high run in zero gravity, I always have to have a new tactic to conquer it.
Yep.
And right now my tactic is just imagine you're really drunk, you're at like in your back courtyard with a bunch of your friends,
Right.
and you're going, ha, look at this. And that's really working for me now. But I've had a bunch of different ways to approach it, and it's always just trying to just hijack my brain and get my brain out of the way. And yeah, Alison Bell, she also helped me through The Masked Singer, which was really fun because I had to sort of try to disguise my voice in different ways. And yeah, she's not only just amazing with technique, but from a psychological point of view, all those anti-nerves tricks, those have been just as useful as the technique, if not more.
It's interesting, isn't it? The whole thing about your mind. It's like athletes that do the same thing. Just the whole process. So are you sort of practicing every day? You're singing? Is it like
No,
you're not doing that sort of stuff?
I don't. I mean, yeah. When I'm on tour, like it gets, these little muscles get super fit.
Yeah.
And that just happens naturally.
Yeah.
And then when I'm at home, I'm going to be, I'll be writing, I'll be singing a lot every day, and probably getting into all sorts of bad habits. And, my old teacher used to say, making up stuff, learning stuff, that's the most taxing thing for the voice because there's no muscle memory. But I won't have to care about it, which will be nice.
Singing live versus singing in the studio, is there something that's different for you between those two processes? You're processing things in your mind as you're performing, or you're trying to just get your mind completely out of the way?
I think I've always been better live than in the studio.
Right.
Just more, it's that thing of just get out of the way and interpret the song. And also I've been just had more fun live because I think I got quite freaked out early on by people telling me to stay away from the operatic stuff and like just keep that part of yourself hidden. Okay, we'll put it in, but really, really soft so it just sounds like a theremin or an electric guitar, because it's like really off-putting for people. And the operatic voice is apparently one of the most hated sounds in the world. People then that's science. And so I got scared and sort of held back. And whereas live, whipping that out, whether it was just like a party trick or for a real reason, because the song called for it, you could tell that the impact it had on people. And so I have always felt freer live, but I think that's why I'm looking forward to this next album, because I've just got such a different mindset this time around, and I just really don't care about the stuff I used to care about. Which is nice.
Yeah, it's that sort of, that's the thing about having a long arching career, is that you can let go a bit more as you go in some ways.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yep. As we get older, how do you balance a creative life, like a working creative life, and family and everything else, and all the things that pull us back home?
I think, my kid, Ernie, he's 8 now. He's a total delight. And generally the creative work happens when he's in school.
Yeah.
So he's at that age now where he can look after himself a lot more. I think it was really hard when he was younger, that thing where you're almost like, you're so emotionally intertwined that you're almost physically attached. But now that he's a bit more autonomous, I feel a lot more autonomous. Yeah, so most of it happens when he's in school, or maybe at night after he's in bed. The harder thing is the touring, really.
I guess that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make that work for you? Like,
we're just...
It's a balancing act, especially because your partner is in the
I
band with
know. We're just lucky enough to have extended family, and it's this sort of patchwork of these people will fly in, look after him for a week, then some more people flying in for a week.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky that he's got the temperament that he doesn't mind. In fact, he likes it. I think he likes the novelty of new people.
Yeah.
You know, gets sick of the same old mum and dad all the time. And I think it's given him a bit of resilience as well.
Yeah.
He's certainly not, at all sort of codependent or he's a beautiful little, affectionate, funny little kid.
Yeah.
But I think he is that way partly because he's felt the love from all sorts of extended family.
Yeah, that's right. It's a whole kind of community kind of thing in a way, takes a village, At the beginning, what did you think success looked like? And what do you think success now is as an artist?
Well, I try not to think about it too much. And I certainly wouldn't want to over-describe it. I think, over-described ambitions are destined to never come true. When I was younger, what I thought success was, I guess, I just had some very vague, like amorphous, maybe a vision of like Cyndi Lauper or something, but completely detached from reality in any way.
Yeah.
And I never truly thought it was going to happen. Like I always thought, I'll just do this for a few years and then I'll have to, go to uni or whatever. And then much to my shock, year after year, it just kept going on. But now I do feel I do feel successful now. And I'm actually really glad that I'm at a level where I'm sort of like a, middle-class musician where I can't just retire and live on my royalties forever.
Yeah.
I'm really glad about that because I need to keep working. And so I guess for me, success is working on a project right now that I'm enjoying and also having a project that I'm excited about doing after that one.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that's personal success, like in terms of mental health.
Yeah.
Like I can't be project-based for my mental health because it means that I'm never living in the present. Like I'm always like, that project's either in the future or the past.
Yeah.
And no matter how satisfying any project is, when it's over, you're still there and you're still you. So that's something I'm working on. I guess seeing the process of making art as that thing that underpins everything, and that's the thing that never ends.
Right. The passion in it and the enjoyment of it, right? Because you've got something that you're passionate and you're waking up in the morning and you're doing something that you want to be doing, right?
Yeah, you're doing something that you feel you were, put on earth to do. Right. It's not always enjoyable. Like I'm one of those writers that
course.
I hate writing. I love having written, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But the practice of it, the play and it as a practice, living your life through music or through any kind of art. Yeah, that's a project that has no end.
Yeah.
And so that's like a beautiful anchor in this weird bitsy life.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to give advice to a young artist starting their career, what would that be?
Don't do it. I feel so much empathy for young artists just starting out now. I don't even know how you would. I mean, at least when we were starting out, there was such thing as Triple J, and there were certain avenues through which you could build a career. Now, what is it like? You've got to make a little earworm that goes viral on TikTok or something. I mean, to me, that's absolutely terrifying. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have to just be hyper online and
Yeah.
be building a fan base that way?
I don't know.
I couldn't do it. Like I'm very glad that I'm, you know, that I didn't have to do that. Then again, it is true that there's so much great music being made nowadays, and it seems to be you're less of a slave to the zeitgeist. You know, like Triple J had a sound, and if
Yeah.
you didn't make that particular sound,
Yeah.
then it was a lost cause. Whereas
Yeah.
now you seem to be, as long as you have something really distinctive about what you do, you can find an audience online. So yeah, maybe that's what I'd say. Like, embrace what makes you and your music different.
Right.
Don't try to compete with, you know, Taylor Swift, because you're going to lose.
Right.
Just, yeah, make what, if anything, yeah, take what makes you different and exaggerate that and see what happens.
Brilliant advice. I love it. Thanks so much, Kate, for being with us today. It's been
Such a
beautiful.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
awesome.
you.
Great. Thanks,
Oh,
Kate.
sorry about my